Today I'm going to work on this Japanese 5-needle pine, also referred to as the Japanese white pine. And just to give you some bits of information for those of you who are not familiar with pines, there are many types of pine. There must be thousands of different species and varieties of pine. And the Japanese white pine, or the 5-needle pine, the botanical name is the Pinus parviflora, and also referred to as the 5-needle pines because all pines have needles, and the needles are born in clusters. For instance, the Scots pine is a 2-needle pine. There are some 3-needle pines, and there are also 1-needle pine. But the most common ones you find are the 2-needle pine, which is the Scots pine and black pine are 2-needle pines, and the white pine or the 5-needle pine. Why is it called the 5-needle pine? Because the needles are born in clusters. So these clusters, if I pull it out, you should find 5 needles. So this is a cluster, just to show you. This is a cluster I'm going to pull out. Can you see that cluster there? I'm going to pull that cluster out to show you, and hopefully there should be 5 needles. So that's why it's called the 5-needle pine. And also, why is it called the white pine? The white pine is because in the middle of the needle there is a white streak in it, so it's got a grayish appearance. So that whitish streak makes people refer to it as the white pine. So that's why it's called the white pine. So there are good reasons for calling them these different names. So this is our 5-needle pine. So one of the trees that we've just let grow and grow, but I don't often work on it, not because I don't want to. It's because I feel that sometimes customers like to buy the trees and then work on the trees themselves. But it comes to a point where it gets too untidy and I am forced to do some work. We've just repotted this tree, so you can see all this fresh surface dressing of akadama. Some of these ugly roots we try to hide by mounding it up and putting moss on it. So we repotted it. So now what I'm going to do is to refine it a little bit. So the first thing I look at this tree, that it's got quite a nice wide triangular shape. So I'll emphasize this wide triangle. It's not a pointed triangle. But immediately I find that there is what I would consider to be a fault. This branch here is literally poking you in the eye. If I remove that branch, I would be able to see the trunk better. And the front of the tree is always the side that you can see the beauty of the trunk. So let's get rid of this straight away, and then we will start wiring the rest. So the pads are there. You can see this beautiful branch carrying all these pads. So what I would need to do is to wire all these branches methodically and get round to creating a nice pad. So we will begin by doing this work, but it is very tedious work, I can assure you, because it will take hours and hours to do. So I can't show you all the 50 or 100 hours that it will take, but I will certainly show you part of the process. So the first thing I'm going to do is to wire. Now, if you look at this pad, this branch and this branch I'm going to wire so that I can flatten it. So this one and this one is going to be linked together. Let's find the right thickness of wire. So remember that we've got to judge the gauge of wire which will do the job. realized that the 3mm wire won't do it, so I'll have to use 4. Remember, choosing the right gauge of wire comes with experience, nothing to do with the thickness of the branch or the species, because different species, if they are older, the branch is harder to bend, so you just got to play it by ear and adapt as you go along. So I will take it from there up to there and go no further. So let's wire the 2 branches together. I was trying to do this as a self-videoing thing, but because there is quite a bit of detail, it's always better to have someone help with the videoing. Hopefully that will help to flatten the main branch there, and then I will proceed to wire these subsidiary ones. Now these subsidiary ones are not as thick, so I will use slightly different thickness of wire. So I've now moved to a 2.5mm wire for these thinner branches. I've just noticed that this pine has got the start of the pest called adelgids. Again, if we look closely, these little white spots, they're the start of that insect pest called adelgids, because this is spring now, and once spring comes, all the insects get active, so we'll have to either jet it off or spray it off with chemical, but they can kill a tree if you're not careful. So with spring, you will get all these insects becoming active. So we bend the branch so that it looks right. And if there are too many clusters of needles, I just thin some of them. Just by taking the tips out, it will force it to bud back. Although the white pine doesn't bud back as easily as the Scots pine. Certain trees are more prolific than others. Now these very thin ones, that's doing nothing, so that I take out. Also these very high mounds, I can take some of them out, too high. This is a very congested tree. So I've thinned it quite a bit. So I'm going to wire the next pair, which is these two. These two are going to be linked. I always get rid of some of these little dead stubby twigs because that won't help with the wiring. I'm linking a slightly thinner branch to a branch which is a bit thicker, so I'll use the thinner wire, but I'm going to double this one. So I'm going to wire these two now together. I can see why a lot of people don't like to have the trees completely done, because this is so much fun that if this was your tree, you could spend time experimenting, see how you can improve it by different wiring techniques. So this is all part of the fun of bonsai. Many people ask if I still get enjoyment from doing bonsai. I certainly do. So you can see how the pad has become flat. Compared with this and that, you see the difference it's made. Just a few bits of wire. So this is what I'm trying to do, get the pad flat.
Yeah.
Now this long branch here, it's doing nothing here, so I'm going to try and take it to the back. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. Try not to break the branch because some of these branches are brittle. The 5-needle pine or the white pine can be a brittle pine. The Scots pine is not so brittle because it's a very floppy pine. So I've taken that branch right back. You can see what I've done. I've done this like a U bend, taken it from here to the back there. So it filled the space over there. So that fills the space there. These are quite long, as you can imagine, because the candles haven't been dealt with for many years. So that's how we proceed. Now I always have to bear in mind that I don't want to scalp the tree too much, because not everyone likes the tree to be pruned too hard. And because I have to sell these trees, I have to bear in mind that different people have different tastes. Okay, I'll carry on wiring, but you can see already how this one is different from that. I've got to now deal with this end so that I get this very light effect. So I'll carry on doing this. So I've spent 45 minutes just doing this pad. So this is the amount I've trimmed off, as you can see. And if you compare again this pad, which I've just done, and this one which has not been done, you can see the difference. Can you see the big difference between the two? So this is the effect I'm trying to get, a flat pad so that the tree doesn't get out of control. Because if these start springing up, it won't get light deep inside, whereas this you're still going to get light, and the tree is going to be much better for it. I'm also going to deal with the back at some stage. That I'll come to slowly. So the first thing that I will now do is to bring this pad down a little bit. So I want to wire this just a little bit, and for that I'm going to use quite heavy wire. This wire I think is like 6mm wire. It's pretty hefty wire. So I'm going to wire 2 fairly thick branches. So it's these 2 I want to bend. I want to bend this whole branch, but I link this and this so that I can take it down. Consider even link it to the trunk so that I can take it right down. So I may have to link it a little bit to the trunk as well. So this is going to be a major bit of wiring. And should I split the branch? I think I could even split the branch a little bit, so I may just split this a little bit, help with the wiring. Don't worry, it doesn't kill the tree. It'll just help a little bit. Where I anchor the wire, that's going to be a problem in itself. So, thinking where to anchor, just see. I might take it up the trunk a little bit. Once you get into heavy wire, that's a problem in itself. It's not often I use very thick wire because I prefer to use guy wires instead. But this is one instance where I think the thick wire will work. This tree is growing very healthily and it's just been left to grow, doing its own thing. But no matter, the tree is healthy, which is the main consideration. If a tree is weak and not strong, then you can't do much with it. Okay, let's see if this wire will do the job. Got it. be careful not to break it. This has bent it a bit. Now I got to link this one. Always difficult to figure out which way to wrap the wire. That is an art in itself. But always make sure that the wire is parallel. Okay, that will work. So by now you realize that I'm always anchoring to another branch. Got far too many branches. I can safely cut some. Okay, now let's try and bend it a bit. So I'll put that, I think it's 6mm wire down in the back on 5. Okay, so I'm going to get that effect. So I'm going to create that. So the next thing to do is there are lots of branches there. So many twigs. I don't think we need them all. But before we cut it, we've got to make sure where we place it. next thing is to make all these little shoots flat like this. I have to remove some side branches. So in order to do this pad, I was wondering what I can do with this one. So I can either wire it back on itself like this and see what happens, but it may be easier just to remove it. So I'm going to cut this one off so I can see more of the trunk. Then I can still have the pad there. And then at the back also, there's far too many. You see there's this one, there's this one. This one can fill that space, so I don't need this one. I'll take this one off. I know that if you're fairly new to bonsai, it's quite a difficult decision how much to take off. So unfortunately, that only comes with experience. The more you do, the more you get a feel for the tree. And then when I come to doing these branches, I'm going to have to decide which of these I remove. There's quite a lot here to remove. So now that I've removed the ones there, I'm just going to wire these with 2 branch principle, that and that, all in pairs, and then arrange it flat. Okay, so I will take another 45 minutes to do this, and then you will see this pad complete. So after another 45 minutes, I've got this pad reasonably flat. Can you see? I've taken so much out from this and this. And if our editor could show the before shot, you can see the difference between the pad structure before I did any work, and you can see what it looks like now. If we just go back and take an overall view of the pads, these and these, and if we can slot in some old pictures of the before, I think there is some improvement. Now there are some major decisions to take. If we look at the back, I know the back is a bit dense, and the back, you need density to highlight the trunk and the front. So we've got all these branches, and some of these will have to go. We've got these 3 branches here. There's another collection of branches here, and then it goes up further. And if I turn the tree round to the front, I've got to decide whether I keep that one as a back branch like that, but that may be a bit low, or I take that off and just keep that as the branch. And then I've also got to decide on this branch. Although this is a very major branch, it is quite low and more or less clouding this pad. Also, because it's coming from inside the elbow, that's a bad point, so that we may need to take off. But if we take it off, we've got to consider what will come in its place. We can use that as a new branch and pad. That can be used, that can be used. So if we look at it again closely, I think I'm going to take this off. Very major decision. Look at that. Take that off. Taking that off. I'll leave a little stub there. Usually I do it in 2 goes. I can get close and take the whole thing off now. So I've cleaned that up. Now, do we need these little ones? I don't think so. These are just little twigs that have grown over the years. There's a nice leader coming. So this can be used and this can be used. So then the next decision is what to do with either this. I don't know whether to take this off and just concentrate on that. I think that is too low. But I'll keep it for a while. Let me just wire these other things and see how it comes before I do anything drastic. So I'm going to wire these 2 branches. So to wire those 2 branches, let me just take a bit of wire. trusty gin pliers. I find it very useful for holding the wire ends and making a little loop. It's a useful tool to have. So I wired that one. I will now continue and wire this one. I would just say in passing that trees like this are grown by the thousand, if not million, in Japan, mainly in the southern part of Japan. And after the grafting is done, this is on black pine stock and that's the white pine bit, they just let them grow in a bush and they're sold fairly cheaply. It's only when it is refined further that they become more valuable. So I've got that done. So I still have to bite the bullet and decide what to take off. We'll take that off. That. So the decision is whether to just keep that and get rid of this. I still think that if I brought it back like that, it doesn't do anything there. Will be there. So even I have problems making a decision because it's a very major choice. Okay, I will continue wiring. What I will do for now, I will just wire this pad. These three branches here form the pad. So I'm going to wire these three together and see how it looks. So give me another break and we'll come back in another 45 minutes. I better show you what I've done so far before I progress too much. I have now wired that branch, wired this branch, and I've taken the wire from here to there and I've pulled the leader up a little bit because it was like a bird had sat on the tree and flattened it. So there's got more of a conical shape now. So if you stand back, that is the shape that's emerging. So already it's looking quite different. What I now need to do is do more refining of the branches there, arrange them into pads. I still have to decide whether to remove this, you see, or that. So let me see if I have my famous white bag. Wait a minute, I will bring a bag and cover it. Okay, let's do the famous bag trick. So we're talking of this branch there. There's several branches there. So what if I were to remove it? What would it look like? Let's see. So we're talking of that without that low branch at the back. And I think I probably don't need it. It may be interfering too much with it at the bottom. What do you think? Oh. So we'll get rid of it. So these are major decisions. So here we go. Chop, and that's out. And you notice when I remove the branches, I don't cut straight to the trunk. I do it in two stages. I cut a little bit and then I go closer because you can never get it done in one go. So that's the second go, and then with the branch cutter or this is a hybrid cutter, I go close to really clean it up. And as I've said before, usually with pines I don't bother with sealant because the resin seals itself. So I've taken that very major decision. So it's looking much cleaner like that now. So I'm now just going to refine a little more by wiring. I think I've taken all the extraneous branches off. And the tree is virtually there. So in another 45 minutes, this tree will have been done. Right, I don't think I've done too much work. 1.5 hours. I think I've spent just under 2 hours on this tree since this morning, Saturday morning. And I've achieved this, and this is the amount we've taken off. So there's quite a lot we took off this tree, and it's thinned it out. I've changed the character of the tree completely, and I haven't done too much wiring. I'm not going to wire too many of these. I'll just leave it to rest a bit. So the wiring is fairly minimal, but it's just arranging the bottom 2 pads and then making that more of a peaky crown, not too flat. And I've cleaned all this out so it's not congested there. So the only defect here is this crossing root here. This was repotted only 2 days ago. I could in fact cut this root off, but I'll probably leave it another year. Let it get strong, let the other roots get stronger, and then this root will come off because this is really ugly. And there you are. So this is what I've done to this tree. And I hope you've enjoyed this work and enjoyed the thought process which made all the decisions come to life. And I hope you've learned something from it. Thanks.